of throwing Molotov cocktails at a federal building. Scott Wright is live on Air 7 with those details. Scott.
Yeah, Philip, so things are quiet here right now in front of the federal building in downtown Los Angeles. It was not the case yesterday. A 54-year-old man threw 2 Molotov cocktails at ICE agents. Now, fortunately, he forgot to light them, so no one was injured. There is no damage, but that man was taken into custody. He has an extensive record. He said he wanted to blow up the building and spray down the agents, so he's looking at some very, very serious charges. Now, we've seen over the last couple of days, we've seen those gunmen that were ambushed. The gunmen ambushed 2 National Guardsmen in Washington, D.C. So tensions are extremely high. Ever since President Trump put into effect his immigration policies, the ICE agents' interaction with the general public has been tough. And to give you an idea, assaults against ICE agents and federal agents is up 10 times in a building.
Okay, so one or two things has happened here. Either one, a drunk man threw liquor bottles at an ICE building, or two, this is classic anarchist work, forgetting to light the fucking Molotov fuse and just making a complete fool of yourself. I mean, what? Listen, go.
I was like, I wonder, you know, I think it's hard to say with stuff like that because, like, was it just a liquor bottle? Because
I don't know.
What, like, was the bottle full? Was there a rag in it? Did he even have a lighter?
Was there even a bottle to begin with?
Was there even a bottle?
Well,
is this a real person?
So I understand. At the time of recording, this is the year anniversary that Luigi apparently maybe killed that CEO, and like, yes, that's adventurism. This is adventurism, but at least the first one was funny. This is just sad. What do you think, Larry? Now, mind you, Larry hasn't been on the show in a long time. I think over a year. So I wonder if anything has changed with Larry. What do you think?
Well, to put it bluntly, with this case, I feel it's the case, of very much adventurism, which is very much classic to, anarchist comrades and in the anarchist movement, the belief that, which goes back to, the thinkers and theorists of anarchism, the belief that, the deed can automatically, improve the material conditions of the people and eventually, get the people to, come around to doing things like this. But, I really do think it was an action of adventurism. And just to quote, Chairman Fred, it's adventurism that does lead the people to situations that puts them in danger. It's customalistic, it's chauvinistic, and it's customalistic in the sense that it, endangers the people. So that's my, my thoughts on it.
Yeah, I think that's I think you put it in pretty good terms. You sound quite different, Larry, from old Larry, but I'm just gonna accept that. I imagine it's been quite an interesting year. Of course I joke. This is Comrade Larry from other Comrade Larry,
I was
younger
gonna say
Comrade
that didn't
Larry
help
from TikTok. They've been on our Comrade Ash's lives quite a bit, so they came on here so we could release the files, the files that everybody thinks that we have stored away in our vault. And today's gander is at anarchism. Now, we've talked about anarchism a lot, sort of in general, over the past 2 years, but we wanted to kind of talk about some remarks and arguments that have been being made lately, especially on the TikTok side of things. Now we talk about the TikTok side of things quite a bit. I know, Cruz, obviously you were pretty disconnected from it, and
I've effectively abandoned most of the TikTok people.
Right.
God has forsaken us, and I don't want to be part of TikTok anymore.
I don't blame you. I scroll a lot and I complain a lot, but I don't really post all that much. And you, Larry, you're on Ash's lives a lot. Are you on the live scene sort of in general, or are you just kind of sticking it with us?
I bounce between, a few comrades lives. I'm usually on, of course, comrades Ash's live, or, comrades like Lord Mellon or any of them. I tend to, bounce around a lot. I do host my own, um, but yeah, I usually just come up, to give my input and also just support the comrades,
Yeah, what would you say, sort of the what is the environment like for TikTok communists? We talk about it a lot, but like you as a third person here, how would you describe it?
Well, I would describe it, as very much contrary to, what reactionaries and of course liberals, think that it's automatically, something like, reactionary or, some may say, oh, well, they, talk about, violence and all of that. No, it's, it's very relaxed, very chill. Uh, uh, Only time voices may get raised is of course if say a guest or op comes up and makes a reactionary point that automatically is reactionary and just a reactionary or a Yahtzee talking point. That's the only time when things make it loud. But other than that, just very relaxed and yeah.
Mhm. I'll also say one of the benefits of being primarily on YouTube is you don't have to say Yahtzee.
Yeah,
You can say it,
we're we're
say what it actually
we're
is.
we're past the 5 minute mark, so now we can say whatever we
Yep.
want. Um,
Nazi, kill,
Clip that.
murder.
But yeah, contrary to this whole, image that, especially us in the United States, have of the communist movement, it's a perception, that as soon as you become, a communist or revolutionary, you automatically have, violence or, any of that on your mind. When in actuality, I always tell people that, being a communist, being a revolutionary is quite boring, It's not, all, thrills. Of course, you constantly have to keep up with theory, constantly, educate yourself. The only time you may get a thrill is, just being out there with people. So yeah.
Yeah, there's a
You
lot of
forgot
book
the.
clubs.
I was gonna say you forgot book clubs and podcasting. Obviously,
Oh yeah,
the most
obviously.
triant and true form of praxis. I think you definitely have a little bit of a more of an optimistic opinion than I do, but that's cool. Um, we need optimism sort of in general. Um,
Check out our
I
revolutionary optimism episode. I don't know the number, but it's there somewhere.
a little bit more optimistic about it, I think, than we are. But that isn't the problem. I think, unfortunately, there's way too much of a hodgepodge of left wing ideologies going on TikTok, and I think sort of probably in Western society in general, which is kind of where the problem is at, and sort of the crux of what we want to talk about. That in particular being, the dreaded Marxism Leninism versus anarchism beef that's been going, ad nauseum for over 100 years. Um, Now I hear you're not a fan of anarchists.
I am not. I am not. Uh, the reason for that is because as as a person of color, my how I view it is this, I find and I don't have a problem with anarchists, I personally, if they're willing to work with work with us and work with the people and put aside, all of those adventurous things, I'm all for working with them. But going back to it as a person of color, um, I rely on, say, us establishing, a dictatorship of the proletariat, because as we know, of course, this capitalist structure that we have is very detrimental to not only, myself, but other people of color. And so, the whole thing that, the anarchists propose, whenever they talk about, say, well, if a state is put in, we automatically have to go against it because it's hierarchical. I come into contradiction with that because that state is pretty much what's keeping me safe, from Nazis or white supremacists or any of these reactionaries that pretty much are just waiting, and already as we see now, are pretty much having open season on people of color, and not only people of color, but also disabled comrades,
Mhm.
LGBTQI comrades, and comrades that are vulnerable. So that's also my main critique of anarchism. Besides, of course, just the idealism and also the whole thing with their view of adventurism. This constant romanticism of doing adventurism, which is very detrimental. Is very detrimental to have because like I said, it puts people in a position where puts them in danger.
Yeah, yeah. Well,
Mhm.
I 100% agree, and I brought this up on the show and on lives with you, um, and in my own personal conversation. So I was just talking about this with someone else the other day, that for me, it really, a lot of it does stem from being a person of color. Um, I live obviously in the imperial core. I live in a society and a government that is not built for me, that doesn't represent me. So what I want, yes, as a communist, I want that classless society eventually. But I also know I'm not going to live to see that. So, what is more realistic for me to put my time and effort into support people like myself and people who also won't make it to, that classless society? I'm looking for a government, a state that represents me and my interest, that
Mhm.
will protect me, that will put protections on the land and the resources, that can find people like me, can find jobs or education, or just be safe. Right now, this government doesn't, and this United States government will never allow that. Will never put its neck on the line for me, for people of color, for LGBTQ people. So, particularly what I say to white anarchists is like, so how are you going to look me in the eye and tell me, oh, well, we could just skip all past that. You'll be fine. No, I don't buy it. What do you think?
So I sit here, as I say, as a white anarchist. As you know, everyone here knows that I'm master anarchist, and I have to look at you and say, a state?
Mm-hmm.
What do you mean? We can't have a state. We're trying to dismantle the state. Why would we go into a new state? Me, the most intellectual anarchist there is. Can you explain why? Why would we do that?
Sure. I'll explain. I'll let Larry pick up. We can't just physically do that because, okay, so we've raised a cadre, we've raised vanguard parties, we've gone to, civil war. Years have passed, destruction has gone, people are dead, things need to be rebuilt. We've taken over all the centers of power, all the infrastructure required, the capital. All right, things are looking pretty good. You're telling me what, the next day we declare victory, and then we all go home and we just say, all right, go ahead, guys, anarchy it is. You can't simultaneously win a revolution without building state infrastructure. It isn't going to work like that. If you don't if the local population doesn't support you, you're not going to win. And how do you get the local population to support you? You provide for them. You can't not do that and then win over the government. That doesn't make
So
any
we're
sense.
so we're not all just going to have a garden.
No, unfortunately, I don't think Freedom Gardens are gonna win. But what do you think, Larry?
But yeah, I totally agree with you, Ivan, and both of you. Because also take in mind that, of course, in situations, with a revolution, of course, a civil war, the anarchists, propose this idea. Well, we can, automatically just set up, councils, and with these councils, we can, handle, the yachts. I'm sorry, the Nazis, the fascists, the reactionaries.
It's hard to like
Yeah,
get your brain to
Mm-hmm.
switch from that, isn't it?
yeah. Yeah, but yeah, they have this view, well, we can deal with the Nazis, the fascists, reactionaries, by having, these councils, and then, each of these, separate regions, we can, do this. But in realisticness of it, ultimately with a state, it will be able to, reinforce, the people and help the people, organize faster because with these, as they propose, the anarchists propose, this whole separate thing of different, cells and all of these, they won't be able to, organize fast enough, and it will ultimately result in the reinstallation of, the capitalists and the reactionaries and the Nazis and the fascists. We've seen this historically. We've seen this in Catalonia during the Spanish Civil War. Pretty much, the anarchists were pretty much massacred by the fascists. Yes, they put up, a great fight against the fascists, but at the end, they were, massacred by it. So it's not only uh, realisticness to have a state, but it's also built on the survival of the people to have a state. The state
Mhm.
uh, as we know, under socialism and into the transition of communism, the state will naturally wither away, and it's much practical and much realistic than just automatically calling it a day and just dismantling the state. We still need the state to protect the people, and that's just my view on it.
Anarchists quickly fall in any attempt that's been made or any major stride within the anarchist movement. They almost always fall into a problem of logistics where it becomes nearly impossible to supply their own movement. And, you know, we don't really like the guy, but Trotsky commented about how he just kind of mowed through the anarchist movement when they were at war in the Ukraine.
Mhm. Yeah, exactly. And I imagine in a lot of ways the fascists were also able to do that in Spain.
Mhm.
If war fighting and politics, um, the foundations of society even require logistics. And if you don't have logistics, which honestly is kind of boring, but if you don't know where trucks are going, or if you even have a rail line to run a train, how are you going to get supplies anywhere? Who's in charge of these things? Like, I've heard anarchists and left comms as well, which are kind of the same thing, argue like, that people will just do it. And it's no, people won't just do it, especially under duress, especially in a crisis, in a war scenario. And I want to speak for, the disabled comrades as well, and lumpen proletariat, that like, I work in the medical field, and I already see the shortages of care and staff in a career field that is pretty well paid. So now, if you're taking away that funding, because we're in a war scenario, how are you going to get people to take care of these people? You're going to have to just kind of make it somebody's job, and it's going to have to happen, or these people are going to
Mhm.
die.
There's one argument I remember seeing, like on my early days on TikTok. Someone was arguing, it was an anarchist saying, well, look at natural disasters. Who are the first responders? It's the local community, the survivors. And it's like, yeah, we could just do that. Like the society basically collapsed in that moment. Um, to which my response would be, yeah, they're doing that until like major help arrives, like the logistical help. They're helping each other survive in the moment, but every single person in that moment, if you've ever been in a situation like that, knows that is not long-term sustainable.
So,
That is, let's keep it together, let's pool our resources and help each other until help arrives. And without a state, at least I should clarify, a proletarian state in this case, we're not talking a bourgeois state, but an organized body that's able to respond to these issues, eventually you're going to have a major problem.
yeah, exactly. I'm just thinking of an example right now in the Northeast. If there's a massive snowstorm, let's say in either Pennsylvania or New York, almost every time this happens, linemen from each state go to the other, and they help rebuild lines and keep the power running. And sure, like, some people might be doing that out of the goodness of their heart, or because it's good overtime, but what happens if they just don't? You
Mhm.
need a structure in place in order to enforce that. And I know anarchists don't like that word, enforcement, but people's lives are on the line. But before we get into some of these common arguments that we hear, or these arguments we're hearing more lately, Larry, what is, explain to the anarchists, what is the difference between a bourgeois and a proletariat state?
Mm. Well, to get into it, and also I may butcher it, so excuse me if I butcher it.
That's okay. We're here
But
if we.
the anarchist view of it, when it comes to bourgeois, what a proletariat state is, it ultimately goes to that view that they have with hierarchy, that they believe that with a proletariat state, it's automatically going to be bureaucratic, or it's going to be doesn't listen to the proletariats or listen to the people, and that it automatically will be filled with reactionaries. Um, and so to address that, they obviously try to, turn to the, anti-communist arguments made towards the Soviet Union, of course, under Stalin. Um, but, my counter argument to that is that uh, it only becomes, bureaucratic or reactionary or any of that when we allow, those who are, opportunist or chauvinistic into it. And it's clear, it's very clear when that happens, uh, sorry, when you see it. And of
Mhm.
course, I would say it would be ultimately much easier to fix because of having a state, because as we've seen under the Soviet Union, uh, my apologies for my pausing.
You're good.
As we saw under the Soviet Union, um, we saw, during the purges, they had these excellent, trials, especially when it came to, those who were opportunistic in the government, who were, chauvinistic. They had them go in front of the whole entire, people and the party and try to explain why what value do you bring to the party? What value do you bring to the people? Why should you still continue to hold your office? Why should you still continue to do this? And
Mhm.
this is something that is initial and necessary to have under the state, which beats out the whole argument that, well, we don't need a state, we can automatically do it. And it goes back to, the argument that Ivan made that the anarchists automatically assume that, the people will automatically do it or people will just do it. No, it's the necessariness why to have the state. So it really, debunks that whole argument that they believe that a bourgeoisie will still exist under the state, which there is, some yes to it. Of course, like I stated, you'll obviously have, some reactionaries, some opportunists in there, but it'll be easy, to remove them from power than to, just not have a state.
Yeah, yeah. I think you pretty much nailed it.
Mhm.
Um, one of the things that I was thinking about as you were sort of wrapping up there was like, again, going back to the argument of where people going to be forced or not forced, right? Um, people in scientific socialism and dialectical materialism, people the product of their conditioning, right? So in a society that is transitioning into a socialist state, a proletariat state, people, yeah, there might be some reactionaries within the population, and people may not naturally be obliged to all of a sudden help out their neighbor, but
Mhm.
that is where the proletariat state should be there to exist to essentially facilitate that happening.
It's the state is mainly there to protect whatever class is in power. So like we're saying, proletarian state is there to protect the proletariat. Bourgeois state is there to protect the bourgeois and their interests. And I think the main thing that anarchists fear is, well, if that state goes against those class interests, or the state just continues doing what it's doing now, or doesn't let the people, or it enforces these hierarchies or forces people to do things that they don't necessarily want to do. But until the superstructure, the culture, and everything changes, the material reality changes, some people are going to have to be nudged in the correct direction.
Absolutely.
Unfortunately, like it's not like a, oh yeah, let's be bullies or something, but
Well, yeah, I mean, if it's your turn, comrade, to spend a month on the turnip farm and you don't do it, there's going to be some kind of consequence, probably some kind of fine or a ticket. Like, you know what I mean?
or
Like,
some nasty looks from your neighbors because they're gonna be like, "What are
yeah,
you doing? I did it. What are you doing? Come
right.
on,
Like,
we all pull our weight."
exactly. Like, but I don't know. I guess I don't know, anarchists don't pay their parking tickets. I mean, neither do I. So I guess we have that in relation.
That's when
So
you get them and they storm your door.
they're here. Yeah, this is not my lighting. This is the police. All right, we're gonna check this video out. Now I haven't watched this one, but this was a 7-minute challenge proposed to Comrade Ash.
Hey, real quick, PSA
Yeah.
for everyone that watches this: just because TikTok allows you to make a 7-minute video does not mean you have to make a 7-minute video. If I am doom scrolling, I'm watching memes, and I come across a video and I see it's 7 minutes long, I don't care what you have to say. You could be Ivan. You could be Comrade Ash. I ain't listening to that. Not on this platform. Take it to YouTube. Take it to a podcast. We gotta have rules. Okay. This is why we need a proletarian state. We can't just do whatever we want.
Exactly.
There has to be
No,
rules.
I agree. That's going to be part of the promo. Okay, what's wild is this video
already
is not
sped up.
sped up.
Yeah, I was gonna say they sped it up themselves because they couldn't fit it in the.
Damn, so this was like a
window.
14-minute video. That's crazy, bro. Oh, okay.
If you want, if you want to like hang out with Anarchist, just let me know because it's 3 videos or like 3 videos in a row or like 2 videos back to back. But I digress. I'm here to offer Ash a challenge. I have a critique for her that I want to levy towards her. That in good faith, I hope she can respond to. I'm not even going to attack her personally. I don't know her personally. I'm just an anarchist. Like I just want to defend my ideology. So here's my critique. So I'm going to be regurgitating an argument levied by Bakunin. I'm not going to quote the argument and say Bakunin said this. This is what Bakunin said, because I don't adhere to the words of philosophers like their dogma. I analyze the words of philosophers, hold them up to modern evidence, and see if their arguments actually stand up to scrutiny. In this case, I think Bakunin's argument actually does stand up to scrutiny. So I'm going to use it. I will paraphrase. I'm not going to say the argument verbatim, but I'm going to paraphrase. So the first part of this argument is that Ash thinks that a worker state or a proletariat state is completely different from a bourgeois state, that a worker state is just ontologically different. They're 2 separate entities. So I'm going to present a dilemma for you. The first part of the dilemma goes as follows. If this is truly a worker state, meaning this state encapsulates the wants, needs, desires, and preferences of all the workers almost on a one-to-one basis, then why do we need to get rid of it? Why does the state need to wither away? In your theory, you say that the state will eventually wither away. Well, why should it? Why does the state need to wither away if it represents the workers perfectly? If communism is truly a moneyless, classless, stateless society, and under a communistic society, the state would wither away, why would we need to get rid of the state if it perfectly encapsulates the needs, preferences, wants, desires, and conditions that are better for the proletariat? Now, if the state does need to wither away, and we do need to get rid of the state, this is the second part of the dilemma, then the state isn't a worker state because it's something that the workers need to be emancipated from. They need to free themselves from the state. If the state has to wither away, then this is something that the workers need to free themselves from. Otherwise, there would be no reason to get rid of it. So there's only 2 options here. That's it. That's your only 2 options. It's a dichotomy. Either it's truly a worker state. So if it's truly a worker state and it's ontologically different from a bourgeois state, then why do we need to get rid of it? If it's truly a worker state, then you don't need to get rid of it. You can keep it. But if you don't keep it and you do get rid of it, then it's something that the workers need to be emancipated from in order to reach a classless society. Now, you concede on one of these points. You, at least in the comment section, stated that the state will wither away, that MOs aren't for nation states. They're not reformists. They want the state to wither away. So clearly, you align with the second part of the dichotomy, that if the state needs to wither away, then it's something that the workers need to emancipate themselves from. Otherwise, there would be no reason to get rid of it. Now, if this proletariat state is truly a proletariat state, then we should see it, carrying out the wants, needs, desires, preferences of the workers themselves on like a one-to-one basis. It should be able to encapsulate the needs of the workers perfectly. So let's take a look at the evidence to see whether or not these proletariat states are truly proletariat states. So first of all, if you concede that the state has to wither away, but it's like a necessary evil, it's a necessary capitulation in order to maintain the sanctity of the revolution, well then there's only one way to make a modern nation state. A is to have a sense of national identity, and B is to have a high degree of centralization, because nation states have courts, judges, legislators, etc. In the USSR, they had a government system, they had a Politburo. There was no way for everyone to be in the government of the USSR. It is logically and mechanically impossible. Might I say materially impossible? Don't listen to me, look at the evidence. Let's just pause and read for a second.
What is this from?
I don't know. CPSUA has become mass party that was at the time when there were slightly over 6,700,000 party members shortly after political demise of Khrushchev. Party had a membership of 11,758,000. By 1974, party memberships stood all at well over 15 million. Of course, the population of USSR has increased considerably since 53, from 184.8 million to 248.6 million. As table 501 shows, party membership more than doubled in the same period, although expressed as a percentage of population. The increase in party size was far less dramatic. Moreover, comparison would be more realistic had we full information on percentage of party size in relation to. So the party and the government are not the same thing.
Yeah.
So
and we see this. We also see this today. For example, Cuba, like the leader of the Cuban Communist Party is not necessarily the president of Cuba, or
right.
In the DPRK, there is a premier, and then Kim Jong-un is the leader of the party.
Right. Well,
Also, before
we'll
you
address-
continue, I do want to mention one thing, because anarchists tend to skip over this part, but Bakunin was an extreme anti-Semite,
True.
like
Yeah.
unarguably.
Mhm.
Stop following what this person's saying.
Yeah, and also to
Yeesh.
just add add on that, this has been, very much a issue with especially European anarchists, with their whole thing being wrapped up with instead of seeing, the problem being the capitalist and that they tend to go to the reactionary point that it's the Jewish comrade that's responsible for it, when in actuality, as we know, it's the capitalist. So that's automatically, a red flag in it. And then something I wanted to get at more was, um, just to point out what this anarchist comrade was talking about, that he talks about that the state, when he's talking about the state, withering away, uh, it really, does not make sense, because automatically the anarchists would automatically make in their view, would automatically make the state, or abolish the state. So I don't really see the problem with it, because in either way, the state is going away.
I got some notes, but I'll save them for the end.
I just want to know what this is actually referencing. Like, I'm curious.
So I'm being generous here because pre-Stalin, there are estimates that go as low as like 2% of the USSR's population within the Communist Party. But I'm going to be generous. I'll give you a higher number. So like 5% to 9% of the population within the USSR was in the government of the USSR. 5% to 9 party membership was around 5% to 9%. That means that 5% of the population were party members who were supposed to represent 95% of the rest of the population, or 9% of the population were party members that were supposed to represent 91% of the population. So if you capitulate to the dilemma I gave you earlier and say that, well, we need a worker state, but we have to get rid of it, the only way to maintain a worker state, or a modern nation state, which emerged from Enlightenment Western ideals, going back all the way to Thomas Hobbes, Jean-Jacques Rousseau, and John Locke. The only way to have a modern nation state is to make a nation and to have a state. And the only way to do that is for it to be highly centralized. And the only way to do that is through something called representation, or representative democracy, or at least attempt to do representative democracy, which the USSR did not do because they had sham elections. But I'm not even going to get into that. I'm going to posit for the sake of the argument that the USSR had perfect representative democracy, which is ahistorical, but whatever. Let's posit for the sake of the argument that they did. Representation in and of itself is a liberal Western idea that is impossible. There is no way for 5% of the population to know the wants, needs, desires, preferences, and optimal conditions for 95% of the population, yet alone all of the workers. Now, we know this is true because there were worker strikes throughout the USSR. There were plenty of worker strikes throughout the USSR. Let's just go through some of them. So you had the Putalov factory strike of 1919. Pause and read.
I'm not reading that.
You also have worker strikes going back to 1918, documented by Vladimir Brovkin, a USSR historian. Pause and read.
No.
Brother.
So we can see that the worker state didn't actually properly represent the workers, is not ontologically that different from a bourgeois state. Otherwise, the proletariat wouldn't be striking against themselves. If it was truly a dictatorship of the proletariat, then why do the proletariat need to go on strike against themselves? If they had control over the means of production, this would be superfluous. Now, we also know that the USSR had a high degree of ethnic centralization and Russification. They had a huge wave of ethnic cleansing. This is documented by a historian called Terry Martin, or named Terry Martin, sorry. But yeah, let's pause and read.
I gotta say one thing before we finish this.
Okay.
Worker strikes throughout the USSR, and then references two instances at the very beginning. One happening when it was still in the dual power state and the Bolsheviks had not taken full control, and the other in year one. Before everything was established. Yeah. No shit, it wasn't
Oh my God.
perfect at that point.
That's so funny, bro.
But to say throughout, how are you only going to go in year one? Show me the rest of them.
I think what I'm gonna do is to edit this is I'm gonna because like I said, I don't want to give them the engagement. I'm gonna get like, I don't know, fucking Charlie from Smiling Friends to like dance, and it just like fast forward really fast between
Yeah.
our comments. But yeah, that's kind of crazy. But we got 1 minute, and then
Yeah. Go ahead and finish.
Internal and external deportations within the USSR, ethnicities such as the Kurds, Koreans going back to 1937 prior to World War II, and after World War II, ethnicities such as the Crimean Tatars were completely affected. The Crimean Tatars were deported out of the USSR completely for at least for a long time. Now, because you have a nation within a nation state, there is a group of people, an ethnic group, that necessarily gets preference due to ethnic centralization within the state organ. How can you have a worker state if workers who aren't of a preferred ethnicity get deported? These are ontological questions you cannot solve within a nation state. It is idealist to imagine a nation state operating in any other way aside from how a nation state operates, a highly centralized organ that is predicated on centralizing power and keeping it away from the people.
All right. We got the idea. But boy, that was it was a 7-minute rant by an anarchist. Are you okay, Larry? Did you pass out? Because I know that was a lot.
That was a long one.
Just to put it like automatically off the bat, he made a lot of factually incorrect and especially historically incorrect arguments about the USSR. And I especially found it, funny whenever he used the word idealistic, because his whole argument was very much, idealistic and just anti-historical.
Yeah. Before we go on, I just want to clarify again because through the magic of Adobe Premiere. So this is a video addressing what we were just talking about, proletariat state versus bourgeois state. You're absolutely right, Larry. I'm just going to read through some of my notes here. Worker state versus bourgeois state. Buddy have the wrong definition of communism. So the whole argument is already it's not going anywhere. Communism is not a stateless, moneyless, classless society. Please show me where that was stated. Because communism is the curse. I was trying to do some teamwork. The doctrine of the liberation of the proletariat.
I refuse, because here I am being the anarchist, and I refuse to be forced into doing what you tell me to do. Fuck you. You won't do what you tell me.
See, but now I have to go back and
do what you tell me.
Add like a joke or like drum roll or something, because otherwise, if I just like crossfade edit it, it's gonna look like I didn't know what it was. The doctrine of liberation of the proletariat. That is what communism is. It is not a stateless, moneyless, classless society. It has never been stated as such, so the entire argument is already wrong. Communism is the only. So this is something I wrote in our favor. Communism is the only ideology that seeks to rid itself of its class contradictions. As this person is making the argument that basically there's no difference between the two different kinds of states. And if why do communists? Basically, what is the excuse for communists to have a state? And the excuse is, one, you need a state in order to, rebuild and to build the infrastructure necessary and to change the human condition in order to live in a socialist society, a post-socialist society. And that's the key right here. We're talking post-socialist society, post-worker society, post-communist society. It is the only ideology that seeks to move beyond itself. And you need an infrastructure to do that. Party versus the government. This person did not know the difference between being part of the party and being part of the government. They were citing some sources basically saying that only 5 to 9% at a time of the USSR's government was representation of the entire nation, but they kept conflating party and government together when party is not the government. And you gave a good example about North Korea.
Yeah, it was like in the DPRK, North Korea, Kim Jong-un, who we recognize, most people would be like, oh yeah, he's in charge. He's the head of the party. But there is a premier whose name I would have to look up, unfortunately, that is like effectively the president of the DPRK. And the argument also doesn't make sense to me because even within our bourgeois society in liberal democracy, not every registered Democrat or registered Republican is in the government. Like that's not how that works on a fundamental level.
Right. No, exactly. Like today I went to my county clerk's office, right? So the person who helped me today, she worked for the government, for the county's government. But if she's, well, I'm just gonna make it up. Obviously, I don't know who this person is. I'll never watch this. But let's say they were a registered Republican in a Democrat county, that doesn't make them part of either. Well, that doesn't make them part of the Republican Party. Or
Yeah.
if they, sorry, they could be
I-
part of the Republican Party. I know you know what I meant, but it doesn't
Mhm.
mean they're part of the Republican government. Bakunin is used a lot in these arguments. Bakunin is a known anti-Semite. Just stop.
Yeah.
Stop doing that.
There's also a lot of confusion I see from anarchists when it comes to the withering of the state and what's meant by that. Both Engels and Lenin talked about it, and it's literally, the state is there to protect everything until material reality has hit a point where Engels specifically said it withers away to nothing more than the administrative day-to-day things, like oh, hey, this is trading with this area. It goes that's just kind of on autopilot. Like, we're not really having to do much anymore.
Right.
It withers away to a very small organ to where it doesn't affect people.
Right. I have here, they were talking about sham elections. Source. I
Also, confusion on how a lot of people do, in anarchists especially, I think, have confusion on how elections work in communist states or proletarian states, where you're not voting for Joseph Stalin. You're voting for your union leader, and then your local leaders are being voted on, and it's a different type of democracy. It's still democracy, but it's not the same. It doesn't work the same way. It's all bottom up rather than top down.
I mean, of course, the general secretary can have a direct effect on your life, but like your day-to-day life is going to be more affected by your county executive or the sheriff or the mayor, but anarchists probably don't understand that because they don't participate in local politics. And then at the end of the day, the last thing I wrote was this person misunderstood proletariat dictatorship when they were citing very early instances of worker strikes in the USSR, saying that if the USSR was a proletariat dictatorship, why are the proletariat striking in their own dictatorship? And one, even in the negative sense of the word dictatorship, even if people support that dictatorship, they don't always necessarily support everything about it. And I mean, that's how democracy works, right? Like, people are allowed to strike. So a strike is just an expression of an unmet need that is occurring amongst the workers that can be resolved, hopefully, peacefully. So a demonstration isn't like a rebellion. You understand that, right? Like, people are allowed to do that. I mean, that they're given that freedom to do that. I don't know how else to put it, but we've got enough, Larry. What else do you think?
I was going to add one more thing because there's a point that got brought up. Sorry, Larry. They were talking about how all the different nationalities and ethnicities, and it's like, oh, well, they're not represented. The Soviets had a Soviet of nationalities as part of the government. Like, they had the Supreme Soviet, or the Soviet of the Union, which is sort of the general, and then they had a Soviet of nationalities to help address those specific concerns. The only one there, like the Tatars, the Soviet Union during its existence admitted that was the wrong move. Like, they owned up to that. They were like, yeah, it seemed right in the moment, but reflecting on it, that was terrible. Why would we do that?
Absolutely.
Yeah, definitely. And also, like, something I want to also weigh in on historically, especially here in the West, we tend to have this view of that all Soviet leaders were, Russian and all this. No, many of the Soviet leaders came from many of these different, cultures and different, ethnic comrade groups, and just, for example, Stalin was Georgian, I believe. Kaganovich was. I forgot what Kaganovich was, but a lot of them came from different of these, ethnic groups, and a lot of these, ethnic groups played a huge role in the development of the Soviet Union. Like you said, uh, you rarely saw, especially at this time, in capitalist nations having, uh, governments that actually dealt with culture and dealt with it well, you know. So this whole argument that he proposed that the Soviet Union was, anti-culture or that is very much, just historically, just historically fallacy. It's a historical fallacy.
Mhm.
Yep. All right.
I just find it really funny that it's like, oh, the people were rebelling, and it's literally day one.
And like the way the information traveled back then, it's like, did they even know? Like, did they like, you know what I mean? But
Yeah.
I digress. Video from CJ, everyone's favorite right now on TikTok. What is the state and was the USSR socialist? Thankfully, it's much shorter.
I'm making this video to talk about what is the state. As many of you all know, I have recently came out as a new African/Black anarchist. So in this video, I'm going to detail what that actually means. So firstly, we have to recognize what the state is. The state is a hierarchical top-down power structure that is based on a bureaucratic system of organization. What do I mean by this? The state acts as an organ of force against not only workers, but also everybody else who exists within the state's borders. The state is constructed to privilege the ruling class at the expense of all others, at the exploitation of all others. Lorenzo Irwin gives a detailed explanation of what the state is in his book Anarchism and the Black Revolution. Pause and read.
These guys got to get better fucking.
There's a lot of that in anarchist videos. Is pause and read. No, just give me the link.
Yeah. I'm just perusing real quick.
Wow, I can't believe you're going for it. You're pausing and reading.
Not really.
What kind of communist are you? Reading?
I'm skimming.
Within this screenshot, we can also see the description of something in a concept known as the state apparatus. The state apparatus, in short, are the wings and the arms of the state that keep its power and maintains its power over the marginalized people within the state's borders. So what are some examples of things that are a part of the state apparatus? Prisons are a part of the state apparatus, police, judges, prosecutors, etc., etc. Government officials as well, and things within the United States like the executive branch, the judicial branch, Congress, etc., are a part of the state apparatus. And also the state apparatus are just the institutions that the state uses to govern over the people. So we can see that the maintenance of the state apparatus, and just the state as a whole is not a vehicle for any type of genuine liberation. We also can see that you cannot achieve genuine socialism under the state's conditions. This is because the state is a top-down organization of power, in which socialism is calling for a bottom-up organization of power. So we can see that the state is kind of revolutionary in itself. The state cannot be reformed. The state cannot be mended. You cannot just make more social programs and that be socialism. No. The state and the wings and the mechanisms of the state must fully be abolished for us to finally realize socialism. This is a point that Marx even concedes to. And Marx is not even an anarchist. Pause and read.
Not the Facebook. Oh my god, bro! The fucking Facebook.
The whole thing falls apart because they're again conflating state and not saying bourgeois state versus proletarian state. And I find it interesting that both the anarchists will say you concede. They concede this point. There's no concession here.
Right. I mean the quote right here is the working class cannot simply lay hold of the ready-made state machinery and wield it for its own purposes. Right. You cannot reform a bourgeois state. Duh. The centralized state power with its ambiguous organs, a standing army, police, bureaucracy, clergy, judiciary, organs, SWAT, after the plan of systemic and hierarchical divisions of labor, originates from the days of absolute monarchy, serving. This is describing a bourgeois state.
Yeah. Again, foundational misunderstanding of what's being discussed.
Mm-hmm.
We can also see Marx saying that the existence of the state is inseparable from slavery. Pause and read.
Brother, what is this? All right, hold on. Pause. I'm looking for this. I'm looking for this.
Larry, you have any thoughts while Ivan does that?
Just it's mainly the pause and read stuff. Yeah, it's just you
It's
got to
killing
do.
me.
Yeah, you got to do better with it, and also just to again critique the point that the comrade made. Um, I would say, obviously, as we stated, under the state, under socialism, there is a, you know, uh, sorry, obviously there will be, the people will, of course, as you said, elect, their union officials and the officials that are in their community. It's not, all like just top up. It's of course going to be at a down level. So that's one of my big critiques.
Yeah, they're sitting here saying the state is inherently top down. No, it's not.
The contradiction between the vocation and the good intention of the administration on the one hand and the means of powers at its disposal on the other cannot be eliminated by the state except by abolishing itself, for the state is based on the contradiction. It is based on the contradiction between public and private life, between universal and particular interests. For this reason, the state must confine itself to a formal negative activities, since the scope of its own power comes to an end at the very point where civil life and work begin. Indeed, when he considered a consequence arising from the asocial nature of civil life, of private property, of trade, of industry, of mutual plundering that goes on between the various groups in civil life, it becomes clear that the law of nature governing the administration is impotence, for the fragmentation of depravity and the slavery of civil society is a natural foundation of the modern state, just as civil society slavery was the natural foundation of the state in antiquity. The existence of the state is inseparable from the existence of slavery. The state and slavery in antiquity, frank and open classical antithesis, were not more closely wielded together than the modern state and the cutthroat world of modern business, sanctimonious Christian antithesis. If the modern state desired to abolish the impotence of the administration, it would have to abolish contemporary private life. And to abolish private life, it would have to abolish itself, since it exists only in the antithesis of private life. However, no living person believes defects of this existence to be based on the principle, the essential nature of its own life. They must instead be grounded in the circumstance outside his own life, suicide and contrary to nature. Hence, the state cannot believe in the intrinsic impotence of its administration of itself. It can only perceive formal cognitive defects in it and try to remedy them. These modifications and inadequate wells that just show the social ills or natural imperfections, and independent of the man, they are the law of God or they will of private individuals, is too degenerate to meet the good intention of the administration halfway. And how perverse individuals are. They grumble about the government when it places limits on freedom, and yet demand the government should prevent the inevitable consequence of that freedom. It sounds like to me more that Buddy is trying to be more hyperbolic of what he's saying, in the sense that he's drawing the comparison of slavery of the antiquity to slavery of their modern day, being, a worker. What do you think, Larry?
Yeah, I'm getting that very much too, because as read it off, it perfectly kind of counters that argument that the comrade put.
What did you find, Cruz?
Oh, I was reading the same thing with you. It's just more so going to the concept of the state is there to represent class struggle, history, in like hitherto that everything is the history of class struggle, right? So the existence of the state is inseparable from the existence of slavery, because the first states in antiquity were made to maintain a slave state.
Yeah.
And those relations have changed. So when we go from slaves empires to feudalism, slaves became serfs, and then serfs became proletariat. And then the main goal of communism is to abolish this system. The proletariat seizing the means of production, seizing control of the government to set up society in which that state will be dissolved.
Building socialism, that the state will wholly be abolished. As we know it, in a thing called a worker state will be abolished. But even then, you have criticisms of the worker state. I will probably get into that in another video. But for now, we will talk about quote unquote socialist projects and did they actually achieve socialism, which we know one of the most famous examples of being quote unquote socialist, aka the USSR. We understand that the USSR never actually achieved socialism. The USSR was a mixture of state capitalism and bureaucratic capitalism. We can see this from writers who wrote in the days of the USSR since its inception. For this portion of the video, I'm going to be using quotes from Rosa Luxemburg, and I'm also going to be using quotes from a book by Neil C. Fernandez, in which the book's name and title is Capitalism and Class Struggle Within the USSR. So from Rosa Luxemburg's Marxian analytical framework, we can see that Rosa Luxemburg was saying that Lenin was not actually participating in Marxism when he was constructing the USSR. He was actually participating in an ideology called Blanchism. Many people have never heard of Blanchism. Many people have never heard of Blanchism, but Blanchism in short is the belief that a group of conspirators, a small group of conspirators, will lead a revolution. And the power that the co-conspirators wielded will be given to the proletariat, which just in practice this does not happen. So this is the early seedings for the vanguard structure, in which Lenin utilizes to construct the USSR. You must understand bureaucratic structures of organizations will smite any type of agitation for socialism or any type of agitation away from capitalism. Pause and read.
Jesus Christ.
Does that have the source on it?
No.
I wonder. No. Which I'm fine with Rosa. You know, Rosa was also only there at the very beginning. She was killed pretty early.
Yep.
By the German government. But you got to have the sources. You can't just put a quote on the screen.
So we can see that ultimately Rosa Luxemburg was correct in her analysis, because what the USSR ended up building was state capitalism. This is something that Lenin self-admittedly says. So we can also see from...
But you can't say that Lenin basically engaged in this like secret ideology and as if he was lying about building socialism and then later say he said he was building state capitalism, because that's exactly what I was going to bring up later is Lenin didn't say, yep, we're going into communism now, guys. Like, what are you talking about?
The NEP was a necessity because people seem to forget that the Soviet Union was effectively a feudal state at the start of it. It wasn't like already, it wasn't like where we are now. You know, they still had to build something, and also state capitalism is not the state does capitalism.
Right.
Communist / socialist / Marxist in the day, they were able to analyze this as well. Pause and read.
I'm so sick of this, bro.
Stop with the pause and read. For people that are against, you know, like anarchists being against hierarchies and conformity and stuff like that, they all make their video the same way.
They really do. All right, we're in the last legs. Hold on, Larry.
We believe in you, Larry.
I'm holding on.
I'll leave off this video by saying this: anarchism is about autonomy and self-determination mainly. What the anarchist is saying, that you must organize the people at the end of the day to actually see what the people want. The dreams of the people can only be taken by the people. The only liberators of the people are the people themselves. The state cannot be the actor of liberation. It cannot represent the people's best interest, because at the end of the day, the state is not constructed for the people's best interest. It is constructed to oppress them. It is constructed to kill them, and it is constructed ultimately to be the antagonism. The state in itself is the antagonism against the working class, against Black people, against indigenous people, against Palestinian people, et cetera, et cetera. So this is ultimately why we see the failure of the USSR as an actual functioning socialist project. We see the USSR doing things like voting for the construction of the state of Israel. This is because figures like Stalin were not socialist. But that's a whole nother discussion that I will probably get into in another video.
So yeah, like I said, this is a video from a pretty popular new anarchist. Again, I don't know what I'll make the audience watch, but they'll watch something interesting.
Whatever you see is what you see.
Yeah, right. There you go. Let's work our way backwards. Joseph Stalin was a Marxist Leninist. He's the one who synthesized Marxist Leninism.
Full
So
stop.
like, yeah, I don't really have another argument. If you just don't think that, then we're in two different realities. The entire video again kind of presupposes the idea of, there's no such thing as a proletariat state, but it only argues an instance of a bourgeois state, and it's laying down the argument that they're putting down the argument that there is no difference between a bourgeois and a proletariat state without acknowledging that a proletariat state is different. Does that make sense? Yeah.
Yeah, because the entire time that video was running, every time they said state, I just kept going bourgeois. Bourgeois state. Bourgeois state is designed to oppress the worker. The bourgeois state is designed to enforce this class system. Bourgeois state enforces these racist structures, because a proletarian state is actively fighting against those, one. And two, even if you use the example of the Soviet Union was actively fighting against that kind of stuff, like the oppression of the worker. It was fighting against the oppression of different ethnicities. Like the argument falls apart.
Yeah, for sure. I think you'll definitely agree with me here, Larry, kind of bringing it back full circle to the beginning. Like, when this person is making this argument that, like, all states are oppressive and violent and only seek to oppress others. Now let's take that argument and say it's true, right? Again, I'm somebody as Marxist-Leninist who wants a state that represents me, and I think it should oppress white supremacists. I think it should go after Nazis. I think it should destroy slavers. I don't think that oppression in that sense is bad.
Yeah. It's oppressing. It is protecting the proletarian class, the ruling class in a socialist proletarian state, and it will oppress the class that seeks to enslave them. And once the other class is gone, and there effectively is only a proletarian class left, the state withers away because now there's no purpose for it.
Right. And if
that's the whole thing simplified, that's what it.
And if you understood, like, again, if you understand the nature of revolution, you'll know that there's going to be outside agitators. They're going to be fascists. They're going to be Nazis. I'm not against the idea of, as a society transition to socialism, which needs an apparatus to protect itself from outside agitators and domestic agitators, that, listen, man, I don't like the police as much as the next guy, but you're going to need some kind of force to, I don't know, stop neo-Nazis from blowing up your gas pipelines. And that requires violence. I don't understand why anarchists are so intrinsically anti-violence. And perhaps it's because they don't understand that violence is the only thing that's going to get us anywhere.
Mm-hmm. I also like the ending. It's also interesting, the ending point. It's like, well, Stalin voted for the state of Israel. Stalin didn't control the state of Israel coming to be. And not only that, but as soon as they started doing their fuck shit, they turned against it.
Yeah. It's almost like people make mistakes. I don't know, champ. Like, and like, if we knew what we knew, we know what we know now. Obviously, we're not back then, but if we somehow had innate knowledge, I'd be like, hey, Stalin, don't do that.
Boys and girls with the time machine. Stalin, don't vote for the state of Israel.
Please don't. Please.
Stalin, no.
Right.
But it's the guy, Walter White in the car. No.
But yeah, just to go off of this and just to put some reference to this. Of course, at the time that this the state of Israel was becoming and was established in 47, a lot of people had thought, that, this is great. We're supporting Jewish liberation here. And then, of course, with things like the Nakba happening, they quickly realized, wait a minute, this is not about Jewish liberation. This is just a spread of imperialism and colonialism.
Yeah.
And so they rightfully came out. And also, just before anyone, of course, the anarchists may try to push, well, the USSR was anti-Semitic. No, the USSR literally was one of the most advanced countries that fought anti-Semitism and any form of bigotry. Literally,
Yeah.
I believe it was in the 1938. I could be wrong about this, but 1938 Jewish Telegraph interview that a reporter of the Telegraph held with Joseph Stalin. Stalin made it clear that literally we punish anti-Semites or reactionaries by death, because
Mhm.
Stalin made it clear that it's chauvinism like this that, if allowed, ultimately will result in the people that it's targeted at ultimately being unalived and harmed.
Yeah.
And you didn't see this in the United States. You didn't see this in England, especially now in the United States, with the whole thing. With people. Their criticism of Israel is not a criticism of capitalism or a criticism of imperialism, or of course, the U.S. having a hand in it. They pretty much, their criticism is anti-Semitic. They still believe that it's Israel pulling the strings here, when in actuality it's the United States.
Yeah.
Yep.
Exactly.
100% chieftain. Goodness gracious.
Anarchists are spicy liberals.
Very much
I
so.
stand by
What other nonsense was stated in this?
Make sure you
There was
pause
some
and read.
quote. Okay, bro, you can't just post a video where it's like pause and read and it's unformatted. Please stop doing that. Put some effort into your work.
Unformatted, unsourced, a
Not
Facebook
fun.
meme.
Not
A
funny.
Facebook, not funny. A Facebook meme is not a source.
No riz.
Even if it's true. Like for the one quote we were able to pretty quickly pull up. I've never read this piece. I feel like if I read the whole thing, it would not, like, we kind of came to our own conclusions about it, but I feel like if I read through the whole thing, that argument would still fall apart, because that's usually what happens. But you also can't throw up a Rosa quote and say, well, Rosa Luxemburg supported this. Rosa Luxemburg was never in charge of any, government. They're different places. Building socialism is different than theorizing about it. And again, I'm not like an anti-Rosa person. But you got to tell me what book that's from, what writing that's from. Otherwise, you could just say, well, Rosa said this. Did she?
Right. Yeah. Well, I mean,
How do I know?
What the first quote that we looked up, I that's why I looked it up. I was like, is this even real? Like, it looks like it came from Pinterest. Like, I don't understand, but
It's
Yeah.
someone's Substack.
Yeah.
right.
And also, just to, add off of it, this perception that, the comrade tried to push, that Rosa Luxemburg was automatically, anti, USSR, anti-Bolshevik. No, she wasn't. She literally admitted several times, I'm not anti-Bolshevik. I support what our comrades in, Russia are doing. This was the main reason why the German Revolution happened. They took inspiration from what their comrades in Russia were doing and said, we have to do the same thing. Did she have criticisms of Lenin or
Of
the
course.
Bolsheviks? Yes, of course. We all tend to have, criticisms of our comrades, but it was hardly, this, oh, well, we need to fight the Bolsheviks or we can't end up like the Bolsheviks. No, even she realized it literally by, I believe, by before her death, she realized this is the revolution. We must support the Bolsheviks.
It's this thing called critical support.
But guys, they were doing state capitalism, even though Lenin said he was doing state capitalism off rip.
And also,
Hey,
just to
I'm doing this thing.
and also, just to put that in again, the anarchists have to realize, the historical context of it at this time. The USSR not only was going through a revolution, it was also being invaded by several countries, and then also to add on to that, the Russian Civil War was happening. So of course they had to rebuild stuff, and by that, it meant that they had to do, sort of state capitalism. But obviously, after that was done, they kicked it out, and there wasn't any privatization under the USSR. No capitalism until, sadly, the liberal reforms pushed by Khrushchev, and then it went on from there. But literally, there was no capitalism in the USSR.
Hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah,
They did a speed run of capitalism and then said, okay, we're done with that.
yeah. I don't know, man. It's. I think it's very telling too. When this person had mentioned again this criticism of the Vanguard Party, and that a lot of anarchists bring up, that it's a select few group of people who lead the revolution, and then they manipulate the masses. And it's like, are you upset that you're not in the crew? Because, like, I don't know, man. Like, how do you think, if you're going up against a big bad state that you're so fearful of, then it would be safe to assume that you recognize how dangerous the state is with their three-letter agencies, all their technology, and all that, right? Is it safe to just have a mass of people all basically be like, you're all in charge? No. I mean, just look at the state of this godforsaken app, bro. Like, I'm sorry, but it is going to come down to a select group of people who are going to manipulate situations and people and organizations in order to flesh out a full communist revolution. Because that is what the movement requires. It doesn't require not everyone's the main character. I'm sorry.
If you wait for everyone to be on board, you will never set sail.
But that's not represented. It doesn't represent the whole state, Cruz. But
I don't know what to tell you.
and that's what I'm saying, bro. Like again, it goes back to very fundamental.
I don't know what to tell you.
The very fundamental arguments. They get upset with us that we're authoritarian. Yeah. I'm not denying that.
Revolution is one of the most authoritarian things.
Karl Marx said that I'm verbatim, or what's the word I'm looking for? I'm not quoting the full quote, but basically what he says is like that.
No.
That,
you know what you should do right now? You should pause. You should say pause and read, and just put it up on the screen.
You're right. I should, pause and read. I thought you were going to tell me look it up because we're pre-recording. But you know what? I'm actually going to, because now
you should
I'm
pause and
mixing
read.
it up in my head.
Just put
Pause
it
and read.
But yeah, and also just to weigh in on that criticism, that they have with the Vanguard Party and authoritarianism, like you said, revolution is naturally authoritarian. It's naturally this way. And so to push this idea that, oh, well, we don't need it to be authoritarian, we don't need it to be authoritarian, then pretty much it drains the revolution in a sense. Why does it drain it? Because it does not allow the people's will to be accomplished. And also, to go on to the Vanguard Party, the Vanguard Party is important because with this party, which is not a party selected by a group of people, it's the party that is most connected to the people, meets the people's conditions, meets the people's needs, and is chosen by the people. That party is naturally the party that will lead to revolutionary liberation. So this whole opposition to it really does not make sense. And I just find it's funny that the anarchists push this, well, we are against violence, we're against this, but yet you encourage adventurism, you encourage this adventurous violence. Doesn't make sense.
They're against
No, it doesn't make sense.
they're for individual acts of violence, just not everyone doing it, because
Right.
they're spicy liberals.
So I kind of found like a conjunction of what I was trying to say earlier, but basically the ideology, the science of Marxism, is to effectively abolish all social relationships. Right? So how do you get an entire society to follow through with something like that? You're gonna have to go on your own, and not on your own, but you're gonna have to use a vanguard. You're gonna have to use clandestine operations to bring humans, to even get humans to a position on which they are able to let their guard down and find themselves, let alone eliminate all social relations, the nuclear family, gender, patriarchy, all that, is going to require the most radical form of human change that has ever occurred in history. It's
Yeah.
not a dinner party. Well, we got any final thoughts, gang? We've been going at this for a while.
I would give my final thoughts with it is, with all my critiques of the anarchists, I would, give them, this, this compliment or at least praise. We do recognize that the anarchist movement has, had some accomplishments. They are able to organize, they are able to, meet the needs of the people, but also I would say they have to realize that this thing that we can, automatically, of course, as they say, abolish the state and, have sort of these communal systems automatically, or just set up sort of these, cells and councils without a state prove useless, because it would be easy for the reactionaries to just, pick us off one by one and then reinstall capitalism. Also, their opposition to the Vanguard Party, and this belief that it's a select few of people that are in the Vanguard Party and are against the will of the people. As I stated, the Vanguard Party is chosen by the people for the people because it is the one that meets the needs, the wants, and the conditions of the people. Example of this was the Black Panther Party. You didn't see SDS, you didn't see the Communist Party. You saw the Black Panther Party be viewed as the Vanguard Party because it met the needs and the wants, and the material conditions of the people. And so, it automatically debunks that. And then also just the whole thing that, bureaucracy or any of that, comes in with a state. No, in a state, it's obviously, obviously more easier to, root out these problems, put, these people who have become against the people, who've become chauvinists, who become reactionary and opportunists, in a trial, by the people. And pretty much, like I stated earlier with the USSR during the during the purges, they pretty much put the reactionaries, the chauvinists, and the opportunists on trial and made them try to defend themselves and say, "Well, what are you offering to the people? This is why the state is so important. You won't see this in our anarchist, uh, power structure, or that, because it won't happen. They automatically think, well, we don't need to do it. The people will naturally do it, which is good to encourage the people to do something. But you must have a state there to protect the people and to be by the people and support the people.
Yeah. And I could agree with that point, saying anarchists do. I would say anarchists are better at quickly organizing at a moment's notice. When there's like a specific crisis or a specific event happening, I would say anarchists do get there quicker. But they don't hold.
And I would say, and I'll push back a little bit in the sense that the reason why that is possible is because it is much easier for people to digest doing mutual aid or feeding people than you're going to be targeted by the government because you're a terrorist.
Yeah, exactly.
And you know what? I'll leave it at that. I'm not going to say more. Well, I don't want to imply that I'm promoting anything.
We're just talking about Minecraft.
True.
Roblox. Actually, the special Fortnite event where Hatsune Miku and Godzilla took on the giant thing. That's what my revolution looks like.
The giant thing.
I don't know what it was. I didn't play it. I just saw the video.
Oh wait, that's real? I thought you were making it up.
No, there's a video.
That's really funny.
It's like all the Fortnite character and all the people attacking this giant monster.
Oh jeez. Larry,
what a time to be alive.
Thanks for coming on to talk shit with us.
No problem, comrade. No problem. It's always a joy being on here. Nice to meet you, Comrade Cruz. And if you guys ever want me back up here, I'll always volunteer.
No problem, man. Thanks.
Absolutely.